Crypto's a clown-infested circus, yo.
Ah, gotcha! Just checking. You check again, I'ma bust your goofy ass.
Just hodlers screaming at candlesticks.
Or laser-eyed cult chanting to the moon.
Time to get off the crypto roller coaster, because the line ends at usefulness.
Satoshi's Bitcoin is coming for the pretenders, yo.
Man, are we excited.
We are pumped, yo.
Pump it up, pump it, pump it, pump it.
Bringing the knowledge, bringing the edutainment, bringing the facts.
Straight up, every week, back to back.
We're here to enlighten the truth seekers.
Like we've been saying, man, there's only one truth.
And this is where you'll find it. Time to bring it.
Bring it on.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Centbee Show. I'm your host, Lorien Gamaroff, and my co-host is Kage, Finternet, Ntshingila. Kage, welcome to the show.
So, Mr. G.
All right, Kage.
Mr. G.
It's that time of the week.
Our favorite part of the week, yo.
Man, this dude is back every week.
Yes, where we sit down here and we speak the inconvenient truths.
Yeah, the most uncomfortable part of our job, man.
Everybody wants platitudes. You just got to close your eyes and you just have to hold on with your diamond hands and it's all going to be fine and you're going to be walking out of here smiling. But that's not how it works.
I've been tricked.
We all know that it's a lie, Mr. G. I mean, we've seen the wreckage already.
That's right.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot more wreckage coming.
Yeah.
Crypto's a ticking time bomb.
But Mr. G, you've been trying to warn people. I mean, that's why we're here.
Fine. Don't say I didn't warn you.
Yes, that's right. We are here because there's a lot of misinformation out there in the world around Bitcoin.
Yeah.
People have forgotten Satoshi Nakamoto and what he stood for and what he wanted.
Yeah.
But all that's happened now is we just live in a world where that beautiful idea, Bitcoin, this digital cash, this peer-to-peer cash, something that can bring financial inclusion, can reduce the cost of transactions for billions of people around the world. Yeah. That vision is gone. Now it's about how can I make a quick buck on this system. And unfortunately, the people that you would hope would be the ones who know better, they're the biggest shills of all. You've got big investors, you've got influencers out there, celebrities, and that's what people are looking at when they try and understand what's going on in this crypto space. But unfortunately, it's the wrong place.
That's where the problem lies, Mr. G, because these people hold, a lot of influence. So a layman sitting at home seeing a tweet or an X post from an influence of that prominent nature, it's easy for them to fall for the lies.
It is.
Yeah.
It's very hard to wade through the misinformation out there.
Yeah.
There's just so much information. And also, there's just so many different blockchains all touting different things. And it's really difficult. If you're coming new into this crypto space or into blockchain, man, it must be difficult to try and separate, what's real, what's not, what's hopium, what's reality.
Yeah.
I feel really sorry for people who are coming into this world and thinking, wow, this is a whole new space, a new industry, new technology, new ideas. I can't wait to get stuck in and start adding value because, where do they start? Well, I'll tell you where you can start. And you can start right here on the Centbee Show.
Facts.
And that's going to be a way that you can shortcut this whole process of figuring out what blockchain is going to succeed. Because at the end of the day, a blockchain is just like the internet. It's a protocol. It's an information protocol. And with Bitcoin, it's a transactional protocol.
Yeah.
And as we saw with the internet, there's only one internet. We only need one internet. And back in the early days, of course, the internet wasn't fast. It couldn't scale. People said, that it would be impossible to have videos and fast online gaming.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? But look what happened. That little simple protocol has now grown into this beast that covers the earth, and our whole lives are governed by just about.
I mean, we're literally going to be, being watched from across the world.
Yes.
Thanks to the internet.
Exactly.
That's literally what technology does for us now.
That's what it does. And that's what Bitcoin can do as well.
Yeah.
Bitcoin as a single unified protocol, something that can reimagine the financial infrastructure that we have today, the way that we store data, the way that we verify data.
Yeah.
That's what Bitcoin blockchain, Satoshi's Bitcoin blockchain, can provide for us.
Yeah.
But of course, now if you're coming into this crypto space, where are you going to begin? You're going to be seeing where are the biggest communities, who are the most popular people out there speaking about the stuff.
Because people follow the crowd, Mr. G.
Yes, that's right. If you're always chasing the popular kids.
2.0 go have some bro, yo. Hey. Difficulty Ice Age meltdown.
Popularity is short-lived.
It is.
It's fashionable.
It's just your time to shine, Your
Right.
15 minutes of fame.
Oh my God, I'm so famous.
Yes, everyone's got 15 minutes of fame, but you don't want to be betting on your 15 minutes of fame horse in the horse race. You want that horse to make it to the end. And there's only one blockchain out there that is demonstrating that there is longevity and a future. And of course, that is the BSV blockchain. And when I say BSV, I mean the Satoshi Nakamoto version of Bitcoin.
In fact, Mr. G, and this line doesn't end at usefulness, you know?
Yeah.
It really starts there.
Exactly.
Because this is all about utility, you know? Like you said, all industries need Satoshi's vision, and that's why it's here.
Yes, exactly. And not only do industries need it, but the people who are involved at the highest levels at major organizations like the World Bank, the IMF, the Bank of International Settlements, they are all looking for something that already exists in the form of Bitcoin SV. But because of crypto and because of this madness out there, especially the deviation away from Satoshi's vision for a global, regulatory compliant, massively scalable ledger, because now we have this universe of cryptos and of course that whole decentralization narrative around being unstoppable, unconfiscatable, being anonymous, there's a wonderful opportunity that the biggest, most important institutions in the world are missing.
Yeah.
And so what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about a specific institution, a major institution, a very important institution, the Bank of International Settlements. And they came out with a paper last year talking about a new kind of financial internet, or what they call the Finternet. And what's so interesting is that, you know, they see the value in a global distributed ledger that is transparent and unified, something that's universal, that can be used for many different things. And so this is something they are pursuing. And the irony there is that when they look at crypto today and they look at blockchain today, they rightly see it as something that, even though it had the promise of being able to replace a financial system, or parts of it at least, it hasn't delivered. And that's because of crypto. And crypto's dominant narrative around the interwebs, something that is drowning out this idea of a global scalable blockchain which BSV provides. You know, when it first came along, when crypto was still, you know, riding high and the promise was big, and these institutions did have a concern. You know, blockchain, with the stated goal, at least from the crypto pundits out there, was that crypto was going to now replace the financial system. It was going to create this universal ledger that was anonymous and decentralized and nobody could control. And so there was definitely a lot of angst in these organizations, from regulators, from banks. But what has since happened over the last few years is that they don't actually worry about that anymore. Because they now see that, first of all, blockchain can't, well, at least the cryptos that exist out there today can't scale. In other words, they can't facilitate enormous volumes of transactions that are needed to service a global financial system.
They're only coming to that reality now, you know, realizing that they need utility.
That's right. So they see that it can't do that, even though that was the hype. Now they're not concerned. Now they just think, okay, well, you know, the problem there is that it's going to end up hoodwinking a lot of innocent people into parting with their hard-earned money and getting scammed and all that. So that really is how these organizations are thinking about crypto today. Yes, they are worried about it, but not because they believe that it's going to replace them. Everything that they see is to the contrary of that. But they do see it, crypto, as being something that's problematic.
Big time. I feel like every time when there's a new technology introduced, you know, there's always going to be loopholes where people see an opportunity to exploit people.
That's right.
It's quite unfortunate with Bitcoin, because that alone happening delayed the actual adoption and progress of the true protocol, you know?
These organizations, these big financial organizations, global financial organizations, central banks and the rest of them, at first, of course, they were worried about crypto, but now they see that it's probably never going to be more than just a speculative thing. And so they are now very interested, though, in the original promise of blockchain and Bitcoin. So they are now looking at their own ways of implementing universal ledgers so that they can bring the financial system that we have today, the global financial system, into a modern era. This is what the Bank of International Settlements, specifically the managing director, Augustine Carstens, came out with this paper. And in it, he describes this thing that he calls the Finternet, which is the new modern version of internet financial services with definitely a big influence of Satoshi's Bitcoin in there.
It's kind of funny because you do realize that Satoshi was way ahead of time, because he thought of all these aspects that will be sort of necessary in terms of making this a reality. And you find guys like Augustine now having to think of this as a new idea, not realizing that whatever you are looking for exists. Just look at the right side, you know.
They're saying, well, what we need to do is we need to take this idea of blockchain and bring it into a more regulatory compliant system where there's governance and all the right checks and balances, traceable transactions, being able to link identities, being able to freeze funds and trace funds linked to money laundering and that sort of thing. What Augustine Carstens is doing is he is now looking at the mess that is crypto and saying, no, we need to move closer, and he doesn't realize he's saying this, closer to Satoshi's vision.
That's exactly what he's saying.
But of course, he has no idea that BSV exists.
It really does exist.
Him and the rest, Mr. G.
That's right. And so they're going to be trying to knock their heads around and figure this out over the next few decades. If that's probably how long it's going to take.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
I swear, Mr. G, I mean, this paper came out last year, April. So it clearly shows that even if they were to, make this idea a reality and building, how long is it going to take for them to actually get to that point? Because we're still having this conversation, and it's been 15 years already?
It's a long time.
And also, what's very important is that there are so many different actors inside the financial system. It's not just a homogeneous system. There are so many moving parts to a financial system, especially a global financial system. So many players. You've got the public sector, the private sector, you've got the consumers. And so this is now something that they are trying to build from the ground up, essentially what Satoshi already achieved.
Visionary.
What is Bank of International Settlements? Is it like any other ordinary bank?
So if you think about banks today, we have in every country and sometimes multinational banks that serve retail consumers, so just the man in the street. And then countries typically have a central bank. And the central bank in a country is what they call the lender of last resort. But really it acts as a regulator for the country, something that manages the interest rates of a country, determines the supply of currency, and so operates within the country. Central banks often need to work internationally and with each other, and so the Bank of International Settlements acts as that sort of central bank for central banks on a global level.
The bank for banks.
It was started a long time ago in the 1930s for something quite different. It was meant to handle the reparations after World War I. But of course, as with time, things change, and so now it's become the central bank for central banks. Also, what it does is it sets global banking standards.
We spoke of the Finternet. Those are two words, finance and internet. What is that all about?
In this paper about the Finternet, the vision that is set out is a vision for the future of the financial system, where we end up with a world of interconnected financial ecosystems, similar to the internet, where services become cheaper and faster. And also there's a lot of financial inclusion. That's very important as well. And that's why cost is important and speed is important.
I'm a bit confused, Mr. G. Sound like you talk about BSV for a second there.
Yes, exactly. This is now where we get into the BSV story. It's trying to create a much more unified, much more user-centric financial network that covers the globe. A very important aspect of it is that idea of a unified system. Not only a unified system, but something that is universal, that can facilitate all the different kinds of financial transactions that happen on Earth. And also when it comes to assets, digital assets, tokenizing assets, real world assets, being able to trade those assets in a convenient, seamless way. So really that's what it's trying to do, is trying to take all these different financial ecosystems that are scattered around the world and try and connect them together to create a much more seamless, more flowing, more capable network that has all the right checks and balances in place in terms of the compliance, and also again back to that idea of financial inclusion, trying to create a place where users now aren't outside of the financial system. They are now brought into the financial system so that they can become participants.
It's quite clear that they are trying to actually, gun for Satoshi's vision.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
So now, this paper is trying to outline this world and this vision. But of course, it's at this stage just a vision.
You are lost.
What they have is this idea that blockchain, the concept of blockchain, might play a role, but all they've seen so far when it comes to blockchain is basically the high costs and the unreliability of those networks, the fact that those networks can't scale. So even though they are trying to pursue that vision of a unified world, they are going back to the drawing board. They are not looking at all the work that Satoshi Nakamoto has already done around this.
Next time, let's stick to the curriculum.
I mean, it makes life so easy at this point.
And if only they could just switch on
Yeah.
to the fact that this already exists for them, then they could rapidly accelerate this.
They would actually make giant leaps, Mr. G, because like we were saying, Satoshi forethought of all the aspects that should be in place in terms of how the system should work, whether it's regulation, the cost of transactions, and how the overall technology works. So for them to have to release this paper in 2024 to say like we have this groundbreaking idea or vision saying this is how we see our banking system in the future, that has already been outlaid by Satoshi's vision.
Yes, and if you think about the things that they want to try and achieve in this vision, of course, there's this idea of trying to reduce the costs of cross-border transactions. They want this global payment system for that. Also, what they're very interested in is that idea of programmable money, or, in blockchain, we call them smart contracts, where you can have rules around payments and that sort of thing. So they want to try and build that into their system. Of course, that's one of the superpowers of Bitcoin, is being able to create programmable transactions. That feature already exists in BSV. The idea of being able to trade assets or transfer assets, tokenized assets. Bitcoin SV is just so efficient, so low cost.
Hello? Can we get with the program?
They always like talking about, having to include everyone. People can use anywhere, anytime, their services. But we all know that it's not just like a wishful thing. There needs to be apps that facilitate that. People need to build on the blockchain. So by user empowerment, it's not just the end user, but actually people building on the blockchain.
Part of this idea of the Finternet is to try and create an open platform where entrepreneurs can come along and notice a gap, see an opportunity, and they can then provide a specific service tailored for some users out there. If you want to have real financial inclusion, you have to allow people who are in communities that see specific problems that need to be solved and can then go and build a solution for that specific community. And so financial inclusion isn't just about creating a network that's cheap. You need to have a network like the Bitcoin blockchain that is open, like the internet. The reason why the internet was so successful is because anybody could come and build a website and a web app.
And it's also facilitating both ends of the spectrum, because we're talking builders and users.
Yes. And so by creating an open platform, it means that now an entrepreneur can come along and see, there's a need. I want to go and serve that need, and he can go and build something specific for that user base, that small user base. And that means now that user base who wouldn't have been recognized or noticed by an existing company, now that they're entrepreneurs, that he can provide that service to those users, and they can then be included in the financial system. And so this idea of user empowerment is highlighted in the BIS Finternet paper, because of course this is something that is important for the world, the ability to be able to make payments and things, and these organizations like the BIS recognize that. So here again, it just shows that the Bitcoin blockchain, being a public ledger, public in the way that anybody can access it and anybody can create an app for it, they have the ability to now go and create a specific app that can serve just a small segment of the population with specific needs. Mr. Carstens doesn't need to look much further than the BSV blockchain.
Mr. G, when we're talking of the banking side of things, there needs to be some form of regulation, right? These guys, they put a strong emphasis on that.
Yeah, so the Finternet paper covers extensively this idea of regulation, because financial services especially, that's where, if there's going to be criminals and stuff, that's where they are going to be. And so it's very important when you are thinking about a universal, unified financial system, you want to make sure that the right checks and balances are in place. Regulators want to make sure that businesses know who their customers are.
It's hard doing business with strangers.
So their identity, sometimes the proof of address, source of funds. So this is very important when it comes to the rules around financial services. You have to know your customer. You have to be able to trace the payments made by the customer. You also have to put limitations for the customer. Many services, financial services, put restrictions depending on your risk level. And so this is an important aspect to financial services. And if you're trying to create a financial services product and you are ignoring the rules around your customers not capturing the right information, then that is going to be a critical part when regulators look at your business. So that's going to be a very important aspect of your business if you want to stay alive.
In fact, it doesn't belong in that space if it doesn't tick the boxes.
Financial regulators are going to come and shut you down in a heartbeat and arrest you.
People think it's a joke, Ms. G.
Yeah.
Like, people do get arrested for such business activities.
The execs.
The big bosses.
You are busted.
Get out, man.
Because I guess that's them making decisions up there. So
exactly.
Only rightfully so.
Yeah, you're safe, kid. So a very important aspect of a financial system is regulation. Traceability, being able to stop and freeze payments and all that kind of stuff. Satoshi Nakamoto totally understood that. He knew that if Bitcoin was going to be used as cash, a financial instrument, that you're going to need to comply with those rules. You're going to need to know identities. And a very cool thing about Bitcoin is that it actually has this idea of identity built into the system. When we talk about Bitcoin transactions, we don't say they're anonymous. We say they are pseudonymous. And pseudonymous means that we can see those transactions and we can link those transactions together, but we don't necessarily know the identity of who's behind those transactions. And that is where the role of the accountable institution comes in. Because if you are a financial services company like Centbee, and you are providing financial services to your customers, you have the responsibility of knowing those customers, capturing their identity, and then being able to link those transactions made by that customer to that identity. So if there are ever any queries, or if a regulator wants to check, are you doing the right compliance checks, the KYC checks, and can we trace these transactions? Maybe law enforcement comes in and says, we've been seeing money laundering activities. Please, can you show us who these transactions belong to? That is now possible with the BSV blockchain because of these pseudonymous transactions. While they were thinking of the Finternet, they realized we need to have this. We need to have a system that has all the right compliance checks in it. And again, they look at crypto and they see how crypto is trying to move away from that idea of being compliant. There are cryptos out there that are explicitly trying to be anonymous. Zcash, Monero, and even BTC now, because BTC has removed signatures off the transactions with segregated witness. And as soon as you remove a signature off a transaction, it means now there's no link to the identity of that person because there is no digital signature.
Imagine receiving like 100 million from an untraceable bank account.
Yes, and that's precisely what organizations like the BIS and central banks around the world, they're trying to stop. They want to make sure that if there is a payment that is made, that it is traceable to the source. And so when you look at BSV, you realize how smart Satoshi was, because that is how he designed Bitcoin. It is traceable right to day one when Bitcoin was launched. It has pseudonymous transactions, every single transaction linked to another. And of course, through mining, through proof of work, we've got an accountable network, because now miners don't want to risk their investment in the infrastructure by not following a court order and freezing funds and creating transactions that redirect money back to law enforcement if it was linked to some proceeds of crime. So, when you go through this paper, this Finternet paper, you realize that what these people out there are trying to do, these big organizations, is they are trying to create BSV. and they are desperate for a solution like BSV. But because of crypto, because of BTC, because of all this noise and madness that's happening out there in the blockchain space, they don't see the solution. And so I'm going to recommend Mr. Carstens to watch the Centbee Show, because if he does watch the Centbee Show, then he's going to realize that his solution is right there already.
Literally, this system exists. For him to be thinking about that paper, it was quite unnecessary, you know, because like we're saying, we have BSV and it's sort of like a plug and play system to all of these industries. So if he was like clued up and maybe checked out the Centbee Show, we wouldn't even be having this discussion.
I think anybody who watches the Centbee Show is going to be saving themselves a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of stress.
Yeah.
So highly recommend. Watch the show.
It's the greatest show of all time.
The world is crying out for Bitcoin SV. Major financial organizations that run the world are looking for a solution like BSV.
They're desperate, Mr. G.
They are desperate. They need it. They are devising it in their heads and on paper, and they don't realize that the solution already exists. And so this is the amazing opportunity for BSV. It's not a solution waiting for a problem. A lot of people will say, blockchain is a solution and it has no problem. But the massive global financial organizations out there are looking for a solution like BSV. And so it's only a matter of time before they eventually stumble onto it somehow, some way, and they realize here is the system that we've been looking for. BSV is just like the internet. It is a protocol. It is a protocol that is set in stone, meaning that there's not going to be any changes to that protocol. Just like the internet protocol hasn't been changed almost since its inception for 40 years.
Yep.
BSV is exactly the same. It's a protocol, but also a general protocol where if you want to build tokens, if you want to build smart contracts for any kind of financial use case, also very importantly, inside Bitcoin transactions, there's script. And script just means you can put code and functionality into a transaction and have conditional payments and all that kind of stuff. BSV is just waiting in the sidelines. Now, it's very easy if you're in the BSV ecosystem to become despondent. Everybody is talking about price. Everybody thinks that if only BSV can get to $1,000 a coin or $100,000 like BTC, then everybody will finally realize that it's useful and it's important. But price is no indication. Price is what you pay and value is what you get. And so what you're going to be doing when you're paying a high price for some crypto is you're going to be getting very small amount of value. And in the case of BTC, you're going to get zilch value.
For real, Ms. G. And their strategy, they always have to be recruiting like new losers,
That's the idea of a Ponzi, right?
Yeah.
So we had a whole episode on Teranode with Siggy Oscarson. So I highly recommend you to go watch that episode. Yeah. Siggy is the director of Teranode at the Bitcoin Association. So him and his team, they've been trying to now solve the problems of scaling Bitcoin. It's not anything to do with the protocol. The protocol is fine.
Perfect.
But now they just need to come up with a technical solution to implement that protocol in an unbounded way.
Yeah, like we said, it's the software.
That's right. Yeah. And so excitingly, the Teranode system has managed to top 1 million transactions per second, but that's still not enough. If we want a global financial system, we've got to get to hundreds of millions of transactions per second.
Most definitely, Ms. G. But the awesome part is that this is not just theory. BSV is actually running tests to put it to a practical use, so that when everybody actually wakes up to this, the system will be there and ready for you guys just to plug and play.
That's right. Yes. That's why, in a way, it's kind of okay at this stage that the world hasn't clicked onto BSV because there's still a growing stage. BSV is still in that stage of trying to find its feet. Now, I mean, of course, it's already found its million transactions per second feet, and that should give anybody confidence that BSV at least is on the right path, because no other blockchain has even come close to succeeding that.
All of them combined.
So the reality hasn't dawned on people that BSV exists, and yet there are major financial institutions out there that are all seeking a solution that already exists in BSV, but they just cannot see it at this stage. So this should give us confidence for the future.
It's because our future's so bright.
But also to your point, Mr. G, the crypto distortion also plays a major role in people not having to realize the truth. So yeah, guys, remember to subscribe, show some love, tell your granny and your dogs, this is your BSV plug, yo, mobile money on fire. Cool. Oh, Miss G, that was awesome. At least now we know what the Finternet is and what it's not. So yeah, guys, remember to subscribe, yeah, show some love. Miss G, we're gonna be stepping into this week's socials. Our first one comes from, guess what, Mr. G, the host of the Coin Geek Show, Kurt Walker Jr.
Yes.
Yeah, man. Legend, yo. He's saying, fantastic episode, guys. Always great to see Siggy.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Kurt. We appreciate it. Thanks for watching the show. You're a legend. OG, the Bitcoin historian.
This the real OG up in here.
Host of the Coin Geek podcast, a great show. Kurt is always interviewing all the thought leaders in the BSV ecosystem and outside the BSV ecosystem. And I would say it's a absolute must-watch show if you want to keep your finger on the pulse of what's happening in real Bitcoin. And he's so knowledgeable. I mean, he literally has the job title of Bitcoin historian.
He's a walking Bitcoin library.
So he knows every single thing there is to know about the history of Bitcoin. And of course, most importantly, Satoshi's vision.
Yeah, straight up. Shout out to Kurt, man. Yeah, our second one comes from Jack369. They saying, I sat back, relaxed, and loved the show. Thank you all. Great questions, great information.
Awesome. Thanks, Jack369. We appreciate those comments. Those are the things that keep us going here. That's all we need. Likes, comments, subscribes. And a comment like that just makes us want to get up in the morning and shoot another show.
Straight up, Miss G. Shout out to Jack, yo. Yeah, our last one comes from Fluffy Jojo. And they're saying, so from what you're saying is Teranode runs on AWS. Or did I not understand that correctly? So the peer-to-peer program Bitcoin was meant to be will run on a centralized control system. That will give into a control card system if they are asked to.
First of all, he talks about Teranode running on an AWS system. Now, last week we went through Teranode with Siggy Oscarson, so I do highly recommend you watch that episode. Great episode. We enjoyed chatting to Siggy. Siggy's really cool. Yeah. And he was explaining in the development of Teranode, what they have been using is AWS. And the reason why they use AWS is because they're still trying to figure out what kind of specifications of hardware is needed to be able to run Teranode. Now, if you are trying to develop something like this and you don't know what kind of hardware you need, it's a really bad idea to go and buy stacks of hardware.
It's not wise, yeah.
And test it out and realize maybe you don't need any of that. And so when you're using AWS, it's easy to just provision a server, increase the bandwidth, increase the RAM.
Yeah.
Maybe you need another server, quickly fire up another server. Maybe you realize that server wasn't good enough, and so you replace it with a different kind of server.
Yeah.
And so when you are testing and developing a system like Teranode, you want to be able to effortlessly and cheaply just provision services as you need them.
Yeah.
And also maybe you don't want to run it for days, you just want to run it for 5 minutes.
As a test, yeah.
And so AWS makes it very easy to do that. You can just fire something up for a short period of time, check and test what you're doing, and if it works, you can switch it off, save the money, and then you've got now another data point. And so Teranode isn't meant to be run on AWS. Any miner who does that is basically going to lose all their money.
Literally.
Yes.
That's like giving your business to Jeff.
So what's going to happen is that once the Teranode team have done all their right tests, they're going to come up with a specification list and say, right, we recommend you run it on this hardware with these specifications, this kind of RAM and all that, because now they will have established that.
Yeah.
And the miner is going to make the investment into that hardware infrastructure so that they can run it themselves.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you're not paying software as a service fee to Amazon.
Yeah.
So that is why Teranode right now is being developed and tested on AWS. And so the other point that is raised there is that, well, now Teranode is going to be running on a centralized controlled system.
Yeah.
What that does is it highlights a misunderstanding of what decentralization was meant to be.
And Mr. G for the longest time.
I would say the most misunderstood concept in crypto and Bitcoin.
And actually, I feel like even the guys who are playing this game on that side are deliberately pushing that narrative.
Absolutely. Decentralization in crypto has come to mean that it is unstoppable, uncontrollable, ungovernable.
Toilet doesn't flush.
Law enforcement can't do anything about it. Governments can't do anything about it. That is what decentralization has come to mean.
Yeah.
But it's not what decentralization was when it was defined in the white paper and what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
You know, decentralization, when it comes to Bitcoin, the first part of it is that you have a decentralized network so that miners can come and go, part of the network can go down, but the rest of the network can maintain and still the system is sustained. And so decentralization when it comes to the network is just about how the whole system is distributed.
Yeah.
Another part of the decentralization that Bitcoin refers to is the whole idea of the peer-to-peer transactions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you have a peer-to-peer transaction, what's happening is you can send Bitcoin directly from yourself to somebody else without having to go through a central server.
No third party.
That's right. I mean, it can be done completely offline. So you and I can transact digitally, where I can send you a Bitcoin transaction right from myself to you, not going through any server.
And I receive it immediately.
You receive it immediately, and you can verify it with a high degree of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Because the way simple payment verification
SPV,
works,
yeah.
which is defined in the Bitcoin white paper, is that you can then use, and this is a technical term, the block headers and the Merkle root, and then you can have some degree of confidence that the coins that are being sent to you haven't already been spent. So when we talk about decentralization in Bitcoin, it's not about controlled, centralized servers. That's got nothing to do with it. And in fact, that is what Bitcoin is supposed to be. It's supposed to be run on large servers, server farms, as Satoshi Nakamoto himself said. Yeah. And those large server farms are governed by whatever blockchain rules and regulations are devised in that jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And then government and law enforcement can, if they want to, come to that miner and shut them down if they are breaking any rules, if they're double spending, or if they are processing transactions that are linked to crime. So don't think of decentralization as being something that is there to stop governance, to stop law enforcement, to stop the man, the regulator, government. It's got nothing to do with that. That is the crypto
mindset,
mind virus
yeah.
that crept into Bitcoin very early on and has now taken hold, and is also the reason why no blockchain is able to scale, because they face, for them, the crypto trilemma. Yeah. Scalability, security, and decentralization. We covered that in our last episode too.
Yeah.
We talk about the crypto trilemma, and Siggy Oscarson explains that it's got nothing to do with creating a system that cannot be stopped. Bitcoin was meant to be stoppable if government and law enforcement want to do that.
Yeah.
That is what gives Bitcoin power, because it means that now you can confidently build a service, some kind of application that leverages the Bitcoin blockchain, but regulators then have confidence that if they need to step in, they can do that. So don't think about centralization and decentralization like crypto, because that's a dead end, and it's also a stumbling block for the crypto people, and is one of the reasons why they are never going to get out of the starting block. They're always going to be stuck in their very low transactions per second world, and why BSV is going to excel, because guys like Augustin Carstens, when he is looking for that system, that network, that protocol that can build his vision for the Finternet, he's going to look at BSV blockchain. He's going to say, great, this is a system that can be governed, can be controlled, all the compliance that we need can be put into place. The decentralization about being ungovernable, unstoppable, that's crypto mind virus stuff, and all it's going to do is make you sick if that's what you're thinking.
Talking about it already does, Mr. G, makes me sick, man, because how do we take, the truth and just twist it like that? When we talk of decentralization, it's not guys running Raspberry Pis like we've been saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's right. Anyway, but Fluffy Joe.
Yeah.
Fluffy Joe, no, thanks for that great question.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you raised that, because this is something that I think can't be said enough, is trying to talk people down from the decentralized ledge and give them a proper understanding of what Satoshi Nakamoto meant by decentralization. And it's going to save you a lot of stress.
Don't try anything. I'm going to kill myself, so don't try to stop me.
Okay.
What do you mean, okay?
No, I don't mean okay.
Thanks for that, Fluffy Joe.
Thanks so much for that. It was good to talk about the Finternet, something that you can see now is in the minds of regulators and financial institutions around the world. Everybody is trying to pursue this idea of a global, universal, unified ledger that can facilitate cross-border payments at very low cost, something that can provide integrity to systems, security, all kinds of use cases from tokenized assets to supply chains. Yeah. This is what the world is begging for, is crying for, but crypto is clouding the minds of these people. And for those people who can see through that fog, there's that opportunity. There is something for you to now jump on ahead of the crowd.
Yeah.
You're ahead of everybody else.
There's no competition at this point.
At this point, if you are thinking that you wanted to get into something like this in whatever capacity, now's your chance. You are early in this whole thing. And not just early, but in a situation where you can now see results. You can see how Teranode is proving Satoshi Nakamoto correct, and that his vision is going to be the vision for the future of the world. And the world right now is severely lacking in people who understand that vision.
Yeah. We need people like you.
So if you get the skills, whatever they are, whatever your expertise is, if you can develop marketing skills, programming skills, business skills, and you have this understanding of Satoshi Nakamoto's Bitcoin, well, guess what? You're going to be better prepared and have an advantage over everybody. And the world's going to be your oyster.
Straight up, yo.
Yes.
We got the most realist people watching our show. People who understand Satoshi's vision. People who know what it takes to get rich. The hard work that goes into that, yo.
Yeah, it's bright.
Straight up.
We're going to be here for you guys. We're going to be talking about these topics. We're going to be clearing it up.
We have a mission.
And we're going to be on that journey with you. Make us part of your journey.
Straight up.
Subscribe to the Centbee Show.
Yeah.
We're not going anywhere. We are excited about bringing you all this content. And all you got to do is hit that like button, drop a comment, and that's going to fuel us up for the next show.
Straight up.
Thanks so much, Kage, for the show. And I want to thank you all for joining us here on the Centbee Show. Please come back soon.